With the WINN FM News, I am Kevin Brown. Our top stories: U.S. Secretary of State Rubio to address energy security, crime, and regional stability during Caribbean tour. St. Kitts and Nevis commemorates victims of transatlantic slave trade. U.S. Embassy warns against overstaying time in the U.S. St. Lucia Opposition Party deputy leader defends contentious remarks concerning the island's medical infrastructure. Internationally, Russia says sanctions must be lifted before Ukraine maritime ceasefire can start. Now, the details.
Changing school curricula could be a key solution to addressing capacity deficiencies within small businesses across the region, as many continue to struggle with financial management. Small businesses are often described as the lifeblood of the region, with various territories reporting high numbers across multiple sectors. However, despite their prevalence, many lack the ability to attract high-value investors needed to scale up their operations. Dr. Davy Sinanan, Executive Director of the Caribbean Export Development Agency, highlighted the challenges facing small and medium enterprises in the region.
And I'm being very real here. The feedback that we're getting from many of the investors is that, the Caribbean has great potential and they're interested in investing in the Caribbean. But what we don't have are projects, like bankable, investable projects. Because if I'm an investor and I have $1 million and I come and I present it to you, Jimmy, for a project that you're doing, what I want to know is, okay, if I give you this $1 million, I'm going to get back $2 million in 3 years' time with all the bells and whistles that goes into finance and all of that kind of stuff. We don't have a lot of those types of projects that are being developed. We have ideas, we have concepts, we have things that can be successful, but we have to move those ideas into investable projects so that we can present it to investors. That's where we are. That's a challenge at this point.
One major hurdle has been the limited collaboration between SMEs, government agencies, and project developers, which have hindered the region's ability to compete effectively with developed economies. In a candid discussion, Dr. Sinanan emphasized the evolving business landscape.
Do you believe that our education system needs revamping to focus specifically on these critical initiative-based projects, decisions, because we don't focus on the talent development in the region?
I think there's work to be done. I mean, we have to understand that it's a complicated issue because, again, we're small countries, so the scale is not there to say that we can offer, a $1 million course and it's just 2 or 3 students that will qualify for it or have interest in it at this point in time. So it's a very complicated issue, but I definitely do agree that we have to start producing internal capacity in the region that is focused on modern issues and modern problems. Climate change. Are we putting together climate scientists that are indigenous to the Caribbean region? IT, technology, app development. Are we encouraging our young people to go into that area at a very early age? I mean, it's one thing to go into that when you're 18 or 19 and you're in university, but it's another thing to start teaching it at Form 1 level. Innovation and technology and project and finance and capital markets. I mean, these are things that are very important.
The Caribbean Export Development Agency, in partnership with the Caribbean Development Bank, is actively working to build capacity within the sector.
Yeah, it's a capacity. That's why I believe it's a capacity. And then listen, project development is a very specialized skill. It's not that, anybody can do it. I can't do it. It's a specialized skill. But it's something that we have to build that capacity in the region. We have to build that capacity amongst our businesses. We have to build that capacity amongst our, government agencies, our investment promotion agencies. Once we build that capacity, then we can have these projects that we can present to investors. And that's what Caribbean, and we've partnered with the Caribbean Development Bank to identify resources, financial resources that we can bring on the expertise to package projects ahead of Caribbean Investment Forum.
Taking it a step further, Dr. Sinanan stressed the importance of introducing these initiatives at an early stage within the education system.
Are we gearing our people and our students up for a career in these areas? Are we getting them excited about it? Farming is another area I wanted to bring up too. I mean, the average age of a farmer in the Caribbean region is over 50. We need more farmers in the Caribbean region because we need food. We need to produce more food in the region. And farming is very exciting. There are things like hydroponics, farming technology, GPS farming, things that young people are interested in. We have to get them excited about these areas.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is embarking on a 2-day tour of the Caribbean with stops in Jamaica, Guyana, and Suriname scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday, March 26th and 27th, 2025. According to U.S. State Department spokesman Tammy Bruce, Secretary Rubio will also meet with leaders from Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, and Haiti while in Jamaica. The overarching goal of the trip is to strengthen partnerships, enhance economic prosperity, and bolster security within the region. Bruce emphasized the enduring relationship between the United States and the Caribbean, highlighting the deep people-to-people ties and the millions of Americans who trace their roots to the region. She underscored the importance of collaboration on security matters, particularly in disrupting narcotics and firearms trafficking and combating transnational organized crime through initiatives like the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative. The focus will also be addressing illegal immigration and countering malign influences that threaten regional stability. Quote, "Through the great leadership of Secretary Rubio, our enduring partnerships will strengthen, protect, and bring prosperity to our region," Bruce stated. A significant aspect of Secretary Rubio's visit is the focus on Guyana, which U.S. Special Envoy for Latin America, Mauricio Claver-Carrón, described as poised to become the world's largest per capita oil producer. He highlighted the immense offshore opportunities in Guyana and emphasized the U.S.'s commitment to ensuring the country's security, especially in light of threats from Venezuela. Quote, "The security of Guyana is a key priority for us," Claver-Carrón stated, drawing a parallel to the U.S.'s security cooperation with countries in the Gulf states. He noted that the U.S. aims to work with Guyana to ensure binding security cooperation, particularly given the threats posed by Venezuela and its approaches toward Exxon facilities. Quote, "That's a win-win for both Guyana and the United States," Claver-Carrón affirmed. He also stated that the U.S. administration supports Guyana's oil development and views renewable as complementary rather than a substitute. Claver-Carrón addressed the contentious issue of Cuban medical missions, which the U.S. views as a form of human trafficking. While acknowledging the quality and importance of the work done by Cuban doctors in the Caribbean and Haiti, he emphasized the U.S.'s firm stance against human trafficking and indentured servitude. The U.S. urges Caribbean nations to hire Cuban doctors directly, ensuring that they have freedom of movement and professional practice. Claver-Carrón cautioned that focusing solely on the issue of Cuban doctors would be a huge missed opportunity, given the pressing need to address energy security, economic development, and the challenges in Haiti. The ongoing crisis in Haiti is another key concern for the U.S. Claver-Carrón stated that the U.S. is developing a strategy to support the Haitian National Police and address gang violence in the country. Secretary Rubio's trip aims to gather insights from Caribbean neighbors on how they can contribute to resolving the situation and ensuring that gangs do not take over Port-au-Prince and expand beyond. Quote, "This trip is going to add in the urgency of the moment and in the urgency of the situation to the development and implementation of a very targeted strategy in regards to Haiti," Claver-Carrón noted. The U.S. will also address concerns about citizenship by investment programs. Claver-Carrón noted that these programs have attracted individuals from China, Iran, and other countries posing national security risks to both the U.S. and the Caribbean islands. The U.S. aims to ensure that CBI programs do not become a significant part of these smaller islands' GDP. Instead, the U.S. seeks to help these countries increase tourism development and improve energy security, reducing their reliance on CBI programs. The central theme of Secretary Rubio's trip is energy security for the Caribbean region. The U.S. aims to reduce the Caribbean's dependence on Venezuelan oil and the alleged associated schemes and extortion. Claver-Carrón highlighted the opportunity for Guyana and Suriname to play a crucial role in creating energy security for their CARICOM brethren. He emphasized that this is a unique historic opportunity for energy security in the Caribbean, with Guyana and Suriname surpassing Venezuela in oil production. The U.S. is deeply committed to this goal and seeks to revitalize natural gas opportunities in Trinidad. Secretary Rubio's trip to Jamaica, Guyana, and Suriname underscores the U.S.'s commitment to strengthening partnerships, enhancing security, and promoting economic prosperity in the Caribbean. The focus on energy security, addressing human trafficking, and stabilizing Haiti highlights the complex challenges and opportunities in the region. German Abel has more on Rubio's visit to Jamaica.
The United States has announced a restructuring of its foreign aid programs as part of its push to shut down the United States Agency for International Development. U.S. President Donald Trump has pursued significant government spending cuts, and U.S. aid has been identified as one of the agencies affected. Speaking at a press conference in Kingston, Jamaica on Wednesday, following a meeting with Prime Minister Andrew Holness, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio outlined the reasoning behind the restructuring.
The United States is not getting out of the aid business. We are going to be providing foreign aid. The difference is we want to provide foreign aid in a way that is strategically aligned with our foreign policy priorities and the priorities of our host countries and our nation states that we're partners with. In essence, how that would work, how it has worked in the past, we are going to be, is USAID or some other entity would come into a country and say, this is what we think you need. And then they go out and hire an NGO that maybe are the ones that convinced them that that's what you need, and they give them a bunch of money and they come into the country and they do things. Some of these programs are fine, they're nice things. Other times, not so much. Nonetheless, that's how it used to be. How we want it to be in the future is that our embassies are involved with the host government, our hosts, our partners, and we ask them, what are your needs? And we provide assistance geared towards the needs of the nation states that are hosting us and that we're partnering with.
Jamaica and the United States have reached a mutual agreement on several critical issues impacting both nations and the broader Caribbean region.
During our meeting, we addressed several critical areas of cooperation. Security, one major area. We reaffirmed our commitment to enhancing cooperation in combating transnational crime, ensuring the collective safety of our citizens, and mutually secured borders. We discussed a global war on gangs, and there is already significant policy alignment with both countries in this regard. The United States has been instrumental in supporting Jamaica's efforts to bolster its marine domain awareness and intelligence surveillance capabilities, which are crucial in our fight against organized criminal networks. We discussed expanded and repurposing development assistance towards our shared goals, including security. This will exponentially expand our cooperation in fighting lottery scammers, transnational organized crimes, trafficking in guns, and building safer communities.
Rubio began his 2-day, 3-country tour of the region in Jamaica, where discussions focus on crime and violence, trade, travel advisories, and other key concerns affecting the island.
And we want to continue to make sure that we build on that. We did touch on a couple of topics. The first is trade. The world has been closely followed. The president is in the midst of realigning American global trade policy, primarily to reset global trade in a way that's fair to the U.S. after 20 or 30 years of what we believe is unfairness, not when it comes to Jamaica, but broader. And from that will come real opportunities to create new alignments and new trade arrangements and new trade opportunities. And I believe Jamaica is one of those places that together we both stand to benefit. In particular, we discussed supply chains. And we ask ourselves, why, if so many of these products are destined for the North American market, why are so many of the productive capacities located halfway around the world? And there's a lot of different reasons why that's happened.
The delegations also addressed the ongoing civil and economic crisis in Haiti.
The extraordinary humanitarian, civil, and national security challenges in Haiti pose an acute threat to Haitians, to regional stability, and indeed to its close neighbors, including Jamaica. We agreed that we must do everything we can to stabilize the security situation in Haiti so that they are better able to build capacity and address their political and humanitarian challenges.
Jamaica is among several Caribbean territories affected by U.S. travel advisories, which have the potential to impact tourism arrivals, particularly ahead of the busy spring break season.
We discussed significant progress that we are making in bringing down all major crimes, and that Jamaica today is safer than at any time in the last 2 decades. In fact, crimes against visitors represent less than 0.01% of the more than 3 million visitors to Jamaica annually.
As part of his regional visit, the Secretary of State is also scheduled to meet Barbados' Prime Minister and CARICOM Chair Mia Mottley, as well as Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Stuart Young.
The Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis joined the global community on March 25, 2025 in commemorating the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade with a resounding call for recognition, justice, and development. According to the United Nations, the annual observance is a time for reflection, but it is also a time for education. It underscores the importance of remembering that enslaved Africans enriched the Americas not just through their labor, but also through a transfer of vital skills and knowledge. The United Nations General Assembly formally recognized through a resolution in 2006 that the slave trade and slavery are among the worst violations of human rights in the history of humanity, bearing in mind particularly their scale and duration. This recognition led to the designation of March 25, 2007, as the International Day for the commemoration of the 200th anniversary of the abolition of the transatlantic slave trade. While the Abolition of the Slave Trade Act passed in the United Kingdom on March 25, 1807, declared that all manner of dealing and reading in the purchase, sale, barter, or transfer of slaves, or of persons intending to be sold, transferred, used, or dealt with as slaves, practiced or carried in, at, or from any part of the coast or countries of Africa shall be abolished, prohibited, and declared to be unlawful. It did not immediately eradicate slavery itself. The eventual abolition resulted from powerful and sustained acts of resistance by enslaved Africans, including the Haitian Revolution, which led to Haiti becoming the first independent nation founded by formerly enslaved people in 1804. This year's International Day of Remembrance is observed under the theme, Acknowledge the Past, Repair the Present, Build a Future of Dignity and Justice. During a special meeting of the Permanent Council of the Organization of American States, OAS, Her Excellency Jacinth Henry Martin, St. Kitts and Nevis Ambassador to the United States of America and Permanent Representative to the OAS, delivered a powerful address on behalf of the Federation. Her remarks resonated with the meeting's broader theme, I Have a Dream, Recognition, Justice, Development. Ambassador Henry congratulated ASG Mendez and his team for this year's celebration of the Inter-American Week for People of African Descent. She expressed St. Kitts and Nevis's hope
that this Inter-American Week, which was your initiative, ASG, will continue to blossom with the full support of member states under the new administration and well into the future. Today, as we gather to commemorate the International Day of Remembrance of the Victims of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade, we pause to reflect on a journey that spans not just oceans, but centuries. A journey etched in the collective memory of our ancestors, in the hearts of their descendants, and in the conscience of the world. The transatlantic journey was one of unimaginable physical, mental, and emotional torment, of chains and bondage, of tears and blood, of human beings who knew that they were equally the children of one God, even when others denied their truth. We strive to forget the horrors, yet we must remember the strength it took to continue to hold on to life, to survive and to dream, so that even as the cries of the past echo with pain, we must celebrate the courage that transcended it.
Ambassador Henry Martin emphasized the crucial role of recognition, justice, and development in moving forward.
Recognition is not merely a backward glance. It is a powerful point of reflection that allows us to consolidate the lessons of history and to understand the resilience of a people who transformed suffering into strength. Recognition is our springboard, a place from which we leap forward, inspired by the triumph of the human spirit. But recognition alone is not enough. So justice must be the seminal component of any healing equation. For justice demands that we acknowledge the atrocities committed, not as distant historical footnotes, but as wounds whose scars we still bear today. Justice calls us to right the wrongs, to heal the malignant systemic blisters that have festered for generations. Blisters that still weep in the lived realities of Afro-descendants who, even now, struggle to defy systemic obstacles to growth and development and upward mobility so that they too can be justifiably proud of who they are, of their potential, of their innate power to shine.
The ambassador further asserted,
"A dream is even more powerful when it transforms into action. When we literally refuse to be held down, when we don't simply wake up but get up, inspired and resolute, marching over the hills watered by tears for the flowering of truth. Development must be the fruit of recognition and justice. It must dismantle the legacies of inequity that persist, level the playing field where opportunity has long been uneven. It must ensure that the voices once silenced by oppression now lead the chorus of progress."
Ambassador Henry Martin articulated a vision for the future.
As we honor the memory of those who perished and those who endured, let us reaffirm our commitment to a future where their sacrifices have not been in vain. Let us build a world where recognition heals, where justice prevails, and where development uplifts. A world where our descendants, in looking back, will see not only the shadows of our past, but the brilliance of our progress.
She concluded with a powerful statement of hope.
The dream never dies. It has survived the transatlantic nightmare in the veins of my ancestors. It emerged from angry waters determined, latent, urgent, immortal. It is the dream of St. Kitts and Nevis that our collective dream will continue to inspire action until justice is served, until healing is complete, and until development leaves no one behind.
Ambassador Henry's words served as a poignant reminder of the enduring legacy of the transatlantic slave trade and the ongoing need to address its lasting impacts through meaningful action. In regional news, U.S. Embassy warns against overstaying time in the U.S., Guyana News source reports.
The U.S. Embassy in Georgetown has issued a warning to holders of U.S. non-immigrant visas, that's visitors visas, that they could face a permanent ban from entering the U.S. if they have been found to overstay their time. In a statement on its Facebook page, the embassy stated that any person who overstays their U.S. visa could face a permanent ban on traveling to the U.S. Visitors to the U.S. are generally granted a duration of stay of 6 months in most circumstances. However, if they provide information about leaving the country before that period, they are expected to leave within that period. Those traveling on the B1, B2 visitors visas are prohibited from working in the U.S. during their visit. According to the embassy, consular officers have full access to the immigration history of visa holders and would know about past violations. The embassy said there is no such thing as an honest mistake, and it is the responsibility of a visa holder to use the visa correctly. The warning from the embassy comes as the U.S. government is clamping down on illegal immigration and has started massive deportations. Since the new U.S. government took office in January, a number of raids have been carried out across the United States, including in communities with large Guyanese and Caribbean populations. The U.S. government has also been clamping down on asylum seekers, with a recent memo announcing a pause on the processing of asylum seekers. Additionally, CBS News reported today that the Trump administration has quietly paused the processing of green card applications filed by certain individuals, including approved refugees and asylum seekers. CBS News reported that the move forms part of a broader effort to more aggressively vet immigrants. According to the report, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services recently directed officials to suspend the processing of requests for legal permanent residency submitted by immigrants granted refugee or asylum status.
St. Lucia Opposition Party deputy leader defends contentious remarks concerning the island's medical infrastructure. HDS News Force has that story.
So my problem is not with our doctors and nurses. In fact, the doctors and nurses have more problems than Guy Joseph. The letter said it. The job that they are being paid to do, they cannot do it
Deputy Leader of the Opposition United Workers' Party UWP, Guy Joseph, sought to clarify his statements regarding medical personnel following reports of the Trump administration hardline immigration and the potential imposition of travel restrictions. Joseph, apparently speaking to the importance of retaining a U.S. visa for medical purposes, used Creole to express his concerns about receiving incorrect medication or treatment here in St. Lucia.
So I will never come here and gloat and be happy. Because when I need to do my medical checkup, most of the times I have to go to the United States. Because moi paye au foute moi vie injection ici. Okay? You think I don't know the environment in which I am living in? You know how many people are misdiagnosed in this country? You know the stress level that people go through when they have been given the wrong diagnosis?
Joseph's remarks irked Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre.
But when you attack a whole system, when you deliberately cause people not to have any confidence in the medical system, when you have nurses and doctors who are working extra hard to put a system together, what is that?
However, during the UWP's latest meeting in Grand Riviere over the weekend, the deputy leader claims that his comments were directed at the state of the healthcare system rather than an attack on medical workers.
So my issue is never with the doctors and nurses. After all, it was the doctors themselves who got together and wrote a letter declaring the crisis that exists in the state of healthcare in this country. So yes, I made a statement. But the statement was not about our nurses and our doctors. The statement is about the state of healthcare in this country.
Joseph placed the blame squarely on the SLP administration, which he accused of mishandling the medical equipment at OKEU Hospital. He also launched a blistering attack on the recently appointed CEO of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex.
A former failed minister of health in the person of Damian Greaves. You make him CEO of Millennium Heights. And you think Guy Joseph, this is Guy Joseph, you think Guy Joseph feel comfortable going to the hospital? There are certain institutions in this country that should never be put under the control of politicians.
The Pierre-led government has cited mounting debt accumulated over years as a significant obstacle at the hospital complex. The incumbent has pledged to help clear the books via the allocation of more resources and funds, as well as the purchase of supplies aimed at improving services and boosting confidence in the healthcare system. Gina Filippi, HDS News Force.
We now bring you these international reports.
Let's turn to Ukraine now, where Tuesday's breakthrough agreement to end fighting in the Black Sea is already showing some cracks. Russia has insisted the limited maritime ceasefire will come into force only after certain sanctions have been lifted. The US made the deal, but the EU has said that Russia's unconditional withdrawal from Ukraine would be needed in order for it to lift sanctions. Ukraine, for its part, has said that the limited ceasefire should begin immediately, and the deal, which was agreed by the US, Russia and Ukraine with two separate deals, promised to ensure safe navigation and eliminate the use of force in the Black Sea, and to work towards a ban on strikes on the energy facilities of both Russia and Ukraine. Our diplomatic correspondent James Landale's in Kiev. He says enforcing this deal may not be straightforward.
Well, essentially, the ones that are at stake at the moment relate to agriculture and fertilizer, because essentially, which is it sounds prosaic, but it's a huge market. And essentially, the issue is this. When there was that now infamous Black Sea Grain Initiative, which was the deal that lasted for about a year between the summer of 2022 and the summer of 2023, that was essentially a deal that said, right, Russia will agree to stop attacking Ukrainian shipping and other commercial shipping that's going in out to Ukraine, getting this grain out to the world. In return, Russia would be able to have a lifting of economic sanctions for its own grain and fertilizer products. Now, what happened is that Russia agreed to that deal. Ukraine started getting its shipping out. But then Ukraine said, well, we're still having trouble getting our grain out, because although sanctions had been lifted, Russia argued that other sort of secondary sanctions and other restrictions were making it harder. In other words, they were finding it hard to raise the finance to pay for the shipping to get the grain out. They were finding it hard to get the insurance to pay to cover the ships that were taking the grain out. They were finding it hard to make the transactions because they were being excluded from other financial networks. Now, one of those networks is a thing called SWIFT, which is an international financial messaging and transaction system, which Russia is currently excluded from. And the Russians are saying, you need to include us again so that we can agree to this ceasefire. Well, that is not entirely a decision of the United States. That is also a decision that involves the European Union. And so the question now is, will the European Union sign up to that? Some analysts say that the Russians have done this simply because they want to cause another row, another point of friction between the Europeans and the Americans. So the ball is very much at the moment initially in the Americans' court. They have to make a decision. Are they prepared to roll back these sanctions in return for getting a partial, limited ceasefire in the Black Sea? And if they are, what kind of pressure are they willing to put to bear on the Europeans to get them to sign up to it?
Britain's government is set to borrow $61.4 billion more between now and the end of the decade than expected 5 months ago. That's according to forecasts from the country's fiscal watchdog on Wednesday, as Finance Minister Rachel Reeves began a half-yearly budget update speech to Parliament. The Office for Budget Responsibility said the public finances outlook had deteriorated. It also said prospects for the economy were down and now forecasts Britain's economy to grow by 1% this year. That's half the estimate it gave in October, although it slightly increased its projections for 3 of the 4 following years. Reeves announced that she'd rebuilt a $12.8 billion fiscal buffer that was wiped out by weaker economic forecasts and rising borrowing costs since her first full budget last year.
As a result of the steps that I am taking today, I can confirm that I have restored in full our headroom against the stability rule, moving from a deficit of £36.1 billion in 2025-26 and £13.4 billion in 2026-27 to a surplus of £6.0 billion in 27-28, £7.1 billion in 2028-29 and a surplus of £9.9 billion in 2029-30.
Reeves said she's aiming to balance day-to-day public spending with tax revenues by 2030. She added day-to-day public spending would grow by 1.2% a year in real terms, slightly lower than her previous plan. The government had previously announced planned savings from welfare, angering some lawmakers from the governing Labour Party. Looking ahead, the OBR expects economic output to expand by 1.9% in 2026 and average 1.8% a year over the rest of the forecast. That's compared with the OBR's previous expectations for growth of 1.8% in 2026 and 1.5% in 2027.
Job cuts on Wall Street could be on the horizon amid a recent slowdown in deal-making as economic uncertainty over President Trump's tariffs continues to keep investment bankers on edge and deals on ice. That's according to analysts and recruiters who warn that if deal-making does not recover in the coming months, investment banks may look to reduce staffing levels. Recent market turmoil following Trump's threats to impose tariffs on trading partners have weighed on capital markets activity and raised the risk of an economic slowdown. It's a major shift from Wall Street's early expectations that mergers and acquisitions, as well as initial public offerings, would flourish under what appeared to be a business-friendly administration. Wall Street banks, including J.P. Morgan and Bank of America, have already begun their annual practice of targeting underperforming employees, while Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley are planning to lay off staff in the coming weeks. Global investment banking fees have fallen to just under $17 billion through mid-March versus nearly $20 billion in the fourth quarter of 2024, according to preliminary data from Dealogic. U.S. equity offerings have also slowed this year. While shares of the country's biggest banks have held steady due to their diversified revenue streams, smaller investment bank stocks have slumped. Evercore is down about 22% year to date, and shares of Jefferies are down 21%. Jefferies declined to comment, while Evercore did not respond to a Reuters request for comment. Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and J.P. Morgan also declined to comment. Goldman Sachs said it does not comment on specifics in any given year, but reiterated that recent job cuts were, quote, part of its normal annual talent management process.
You were listening to the WINN FM 98.9 newscast. Our top stories were U.S. Secretary of State Rubio to address energy security, crime, and regional stability during Caribbean tour. St. Kitts and Nevis commemorates victims of transatlantic slave trade. U.S. Embassy warns against overstaying time in the U.S. St. Lucia Opposition Party deputy leader defends contentious remarks concerning the island's medical infrastructure. Internationally, Russia says sanctions must be lifted before Ukraine maritime ceasefire can start. Thank you for listening.